I actually started at a time when a lot of the changes have already been put into place, but I've also seen, we closed our building in Grand Falls, Windsor. The community there really, it was a backlash. They didn't, they saw it as us closing, but and a loss of service, which, it eventually will be. We will do our best to serve the communities, but when you don't have people on the ground, sometimes you don't hear the story. So, I mean, that is a worry of ours. We will do our best to be there, but with less people, you can only do so much.
We hear it every day from viewers and listeners who say they're hearing repeats, or, why don't we challenge that person? Why didn't we do more on that story? Why aren't they hearing certain types of interviews, or, the kind of stories that we used to do with longer stories with more research or even more sound? And I think a lot of them realize that, the time and the effort, it just isn't available anymore to do that kind of material. But, listeners and viewers are noticing, and I think they're concerned.
The budget cuts have impacted everybody. So they've impacted the North, and I think there's we hear a lot about centralization. More and more things are being based in Toronto, for example. In the Yukon, I think there's a real movement afoot to basically just base everything in Yellowknife and have Yukon reporters contribute to something in Yellowknife, which would be unfortunate. I mean, it's one of those things, the North as a region, in a lot of ways exists only in the minds of the federal government and the CBC, because in the Yukon we don't relate as closely to the NWT as you might think if you live down south.
Some of the stuff that we do doesn't necessarily bring in ads and profit, but it is ever so important culturally. It is ever so important to build a nation that knows about themselves, that has a national pride, and understands each other and knows about each other. So without this, we lose all that. CBC Radio-Canada is the key to that sentiment of being Canadian.
The CBC or public broadcasters need stable funding. You can't every year just start cutting and keep cutting and keep cutting and say, well, do more with less, do more with less, do more with less. It's just not going to work. At some point, we aren't going to have a CBC. It just won't be there anymore because there won't be any money to fund it.
I think the Board of Directors, there's a perception, accurate or not, that you get handpicked because you're a buddy of somebody and you're going to get this fancy thing you can put on your resume that says, I sit on the Board of Directors for CBC. And then you go into these meetings however many times a year, and you're just there to check the list. The only question I can see you guys asking is the government going to be okay with us approving this? Are we meeting what they want us to do? Where is your accountability to the public of this country? You should be put in place to ensure that the needs of our audiences and our public are met according to our Broadcasting Act and our mandate.
I encourage the board members of the CBC to consider what is happening to Canada's national public broadcaster and to support public broadcasting, to champion public broadcasting, because it doesn't matter what political party you belong to or you believe in, Canadians want and need a public broadcaster. So I urge you to use the Broadcasting Act to your advantage. It empowers you to support Canadians and to support public broadcasting.